track of time. Let's stay a while up close and personal.
Hello, sisterhood. Welcome to the LDH podcast. My name is Kim Jansen, and I'm delighted to be your host.
Welcome to the LDH podcast, ladies and gents. My name is Leanne Lamini, and I am the founder of LDH and End Girl Hate. Welcome.
Now, today is super exciting because we are talking all things relationships. Yes. And we are joined by Chelsea Da Gama. She is a dating navigation strategist, a personal development coach. She has a degree in communication science. You're a certified life coach. And really what Chelsea does is help people navigate their personal relationships, Lee, and challenges in their lives. Now, that's a mouthful, but those are the areas where we need all the help we can get, Chelsea.
That is
Thank you
true.
so much for being with us today. We're so excited to have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much,
Chels.
ladies,
Thank
for
you.
having me. Thank you so much.
Now, talking about relationships, one of the things you've mentioned when we've heard you speak is building healthy attachments. What is a healthy attachment?
So, the thing is, Kim, I always say that when we make connections, we make them based on how, people make you feel and things like that. But you find that when you are getting attached to people, that it could be like a trauma bond, or you connect over things that are not so good. And then you think that those are, friendships and relationships that should be developing. So a healthy one is one that is more secure, where you get to be your own person, they get to be their own person, and when you get together, it's healthy and it's great.
Yeah.
And for me, ultimately, that is what a healthy attachment is, and that is what it looks like.
But now, Chelsea and Leanne, I don't think that we think about how we're forming relationships when we connect with someone. We often go on what's happening in the moment, gut instinct, which can be really good as well. But when it comes to forming those healthy attachments that you're talking about, why is that such a good thing for us? Because you mentioned trauma bonds. So maybe you can touch on why forming a healthy attachment consciously is so good for us.
So, it's so important for us to form those healthy attachments, because it's ultimately your relationship with yourself and what that means for you. And, we don't understand what these attachments are because there's different attachment styles. I'm not sure if you guys know about different attachment styles.
No.
And a lot of my clients don't know about attachment styles. Like, there's 4 that I feel are the most important ones.
Brilliant. I was going to ask you, please unpack those attachment styles for us.
So we've got the 4 that are very important. We've got the, fearful, avoidant attachment style, or like your disorganized attachment. We've got your avoidant attachment style. We've got your dismissive avoidant, and then we've got the secure one. And I like to look at it as a quadrant. And, we can't be perfect people. We can't say, oh, I'm going to be securely attached. I am this amazing person. And I find myself moving in between the different quadrants based on how I'm triggered at different instances in my life. So the goal is always to be securely attached. I wasn't always securely attached. I used to be anxiously attached. And when you're anxiously attached, it comes with a lot of, you're so afraid that people are going to leave your life. And, to answer you, it's so important for you to have these healthy attachments so that you know where you're at when you're looking at that quadrant. And you're looking at, where do I find myself at different instances, and how can I get to being securely attached?
Chels, statistically, is there an attachment style that most people lean towards, or could it be different for different people at various stages of their lives? Or have you seen that most people go into a relationship like this with this attachment style? Is there, or no?
So I don't know the specific stats, Leanne, but what I do know is that because of different experiences in your life, you will find yourself leaning more towards a certain attachment style. Like, for instance, if you have a parent who wasn't, emotionally present. And I always say to my audience and to my clients, it's not an attack on your caregiver or your parent, but you might find that, growing up, your parent was always distracted by their phone, or they would leave you to cry. Because that is when your attachment styles are formed. And that teaches you how to connect with people.
As young as that.
Yes, as young as that. And then you start to have an idea of, okay, this is how relationships are supposed to be.
Yeah.
So when you find that you've been neglected emotionally, you could develop a dismissive attachment style or an anxious attachment style. So either you don't want connection at all because of how it's hurt you before when you did try to connect, or it has you so fearful of abandonment that you anxiously attach to people and you're so afraid. So that is what I've noticed with people. But what I have found being common is that your anxiously attached attract your dismissive. So
interesting.
yes,
So
very.
now you've got two opposites that are
Exactly.
coming
Trying to
together.
make it work,
Exactly,
yeah.
and then we don't realize that it's actually just a trauma.
Right.
Or our attachment style that we formed because of how we were raised. And I mean, we're saying that, but Leanne, you know this about me, Chelsea, I think you know as well. My dad wasn't around.
Right.
So when you're talking about this, then my inner childhood wound is springing up because my dad wasn't there. So when I met my husband, guess what happened? Anxiously attached. He is super independent, left home at 18, moved overseas. So all of a sudden he's like, why are you acting like this?
Right.
And I think that's the kind of conversation people have is like, stop acting out.
Right.
Yes.
Like, and all it really is this is my attachment style. That just speaks to having so much grace for yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, it really does. And I love what you said about being aware of, your relationship with your father and how it affected your relationship with your husband, because
Lots of work there.
exactly. And I always tell my clients that, especially the ones who are single and looking for love, I always say, you can do all the healing, you can do everything you want to do, go to a retreat, whatever else it is, but my goodness, you're going to be triggered when you are in that healthy relationship. Your first healthy relationship is going to trigger you more than anything else.
Wow.
Because that's when you're really going to see yourself and all of the ugly things. And, when you treat yourself with a certain level of care and grace, it's easier. But what if you don't know these things? So every fight, you would think, oh, we're breaking up.
Right.
You see?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you're saying something now, and Dr. Gabor Mate often speaks about it. Eckhart Tolle has written about it, about your relationships actually bringing out all the stuff that you need to heal. So we automatically go, Leanne, oh, you're not for me.
Yes.
I'm walking away. When that person is actually just unearthing in the relationship the areas that you need to work on.
Yes.
So can you tell me about that perhaps, Chelsea? Why understanding, one, your own self-worth is so important in terms of how you'll make, and not just your self-worth, but where you are at as an individual in terms of making healthy decisions when it comes to relationships.
So, doing the self-work is so important. And, I do specialize in dating and relationships. But when I deal with my clients, I always say we spend 15 minutes on complaining about your relationships, and the other 45 we're going to spend working on self, because that's where the root is and that's where the issue is, right?
Yeah.
So when you are working on yourself and you're doing the self-work and you're uncovering all of these things, you start to look at relationships not as something that is being done to you, but something that you are now part of. And what is my contribution to that? And we're no longer like, when you're dating, it's like, oh, they were not for me, I'm going to leave them, this is so unhealthy, I know my worth.
Right.
Because, you can know your worth.
That's the one that gets thrown around. I know my worth.
I know my worth, but you're not doing any self-work, honey.
Right.
Yeah.
I see that you know your work, but you're not digging deep.
Yeah. Wow.
And you're not ready. Well, I don't believe in being ready for a relationship, because it's going to trigger you wherever
Either
you're
way,
at.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be healed and ready and wait for the aha moment, but be in a position where you can be a positive contribution to that connection, however long it lasts for.
Right.
And work at that. And as you're working on yourself, you can then be all of those things. And that is what is just so incredible.
Chelsea, let's get practical, because I love the practicalities, right? And we all, exactly. Now we all think that we can go online. And I love, like, I don't want to discredit anything that's happening online. It's a great space for us to grow and learn. But we all think we can go online, you read an article or two, and you think that's enough. But how do I then start applying, if you can give me maybe 2 things you need to do when it comes to forming a healthy attachment? What do I need to look out for within myself in order to make a good decision when it comes to a relationship. And when I say relationship, because we often think romantic relationships, but a deep friendship, don't you think it is? It's also where we form healthy or unhealthy attachment styles.
So yes, you know, I love what you said about going online, and that's what makes it difficult because so many people are giving advice. If they're whether they're a coach or not, it could even be someone who's of influence. And if they decide to speak about relationships, you think, oh, that's how it is, you know? There's this get the bag culture, and you know, that's all people are thinking about. You're not thinking about building proper relationships or anything like that. And you know, I always say, you know, block out the outside noise and always do what works for you. It's something that you always speak about, Leanne, is about just being yourself and doing what works for you. And that's how it is when it comes to dating. And I always encourage women not to overthink it and not have scarcity mindset. That's
a difficult one.
Yes. Women will be like, oh my goodness, I'm 45, I'm divorced. What am I going to do? I can't date. It's so difficult. Don't have scarcity mindset.
Wow.
But to answer you when it comes to that, block out the outside noise and you see what works for you. You zoom in on your life and you're like, okay, I want to date. I want to bring new connections into my life. Because when you're single, and I always say, you don't just meet men like meeting them, you meet them through other women, you meet them through different things, which means your life is now going in a different direction. Your routines are different. So you have a routine, you have a different way of living, but you have to set it out and you have to be so intentional about the way that you are going to be living your life for you. So what I love to do is I love journaling. I love touching base with myself. I love doing things like that. So what I do is I set out, okay, what is my life going to look like? Who am I going to be in this new phase of my life? And when I was single, before I met my boyfriend, I was like, okay, this is the girl I want to be. This is how I'm going to be living. And this is who I want to be and how I want to show up in a relationship. So you set those intentions for yourself and you do the inner work, like I said, shadow work, journaling. You look at the ugly things about you so that when they do come up, you're not scaring the other person away, you're not pushing the other person away. That's just as important. And then also what you need to do is you find voices online that resonate with what works for you. Because someone else might be chasing the bag, someone else might be chasing the mind. You find what works for you and you apply that.
And I mean, you're saying that now, sorry, Leanne, but just one of the things that you said was find what works for you. And I think this question might come up often, what works for me? I don't know myself enough to understand what works for me. And you touched on so many things.
There was a lot.
I mean, there's shadow work. There's so many things that we can unpack and get into, but we're not going to talk about that now. Everyone will have to come back and listen when we do have that conversation. But when it comes to me and really understanding my self-worth, but not from an ego perspective, not I am worth Maseratis and mansions, and we're not saying that you're not, but my self-worth in terms of these are my boundaries. This is what I would like from a relationship. Writing it down, I love journaling because writing it down makes it very real. And all of a sudden this thing becomes tangible in terms of who I want to be. What is one other way that you can just, somebody who's listening for the first time has never heard of self-mastery, how do I get to know myself? Because that self has to know who they are before they get into any kind of friendship or relationship, really.
Date yourself.
Okay.
That's what you need to be doing.
Sounds easy.
Yes, it does. And it is as simple as that. I am someone who believes in flow. I don't like complicating my life. I am also the type of coach who I like to work with what I can work with. Because when I'm in that moment, I can't think of all of these like techniques or anything or journaling, what is shadow work, I'll freak out. So I date myself. And that's what I tell my clients, date yourself. I give them assignments like taking themselves on solo dates.
I love that.
You know, when you've been on a journey of self-mastery, a solo date, oh, come on, that's easy. But for someone who's never done it before, it's the biggest thing ever. It really is. And I make my clients date themselves. I allow them to experience themselves and journey back to themselves. Because along the way, you find that you've lost yourself. And I
love that. Experience yourself.
Yes. And as you journey back to yourself, you unlock these levels of self-love within yourself and this deep appreciation for self. So what does that look like practically? You buy yourself flowers. How do you know your worth? You're not buying yourself flowers.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're not taking yourself out.
Yeah.
You're not aware of what your boundaries are.
Yeah.
And you know, I always say dating is a process in which you are learning about yourself.
Yes.
Allow for it.
I love that.
You saw this? Great. You didn't like that? Awesome. We move on to the next thing. And before you know it, you're in a connection, however long it lasts for. I always emphasize that because everyone wants to make each connection the one. It's not the one, okay? But it has a purpose for that season, and it's okay until you meet that person where that connection could be a lifetime, and it's great.
Chelsea, I wanted to ask, so now that you're saying it, and I didn't think of it as me dating myself, but I love spending time by myself. And I've heard my kids say that they sometimes judge people who are sitting alone at a restaurant, like, what do you think?
Shane, why is she alone?
Yes. And I'm like, no, sometimes you just want to be by yourself and you enjoy your own company. You enjoy taking yourself out. So I would encourage people to start dating themselves more so that you know, yes, what you like, what you don't like, so that when you're going into that relationship, you know, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I don't want to do. But where does that judgment come from? Because I know that some people feel very uncomfortable in that space of being alone. I'm not taking myself out for coffee because I don't want to be alone. Would you say that that goes back to childhood trauma, past experience, and how do we get over that as women to just be ourselves and be okay with just being us and in our own space?
I love that, Leanne. Just to touch on the dating yourself thing, that's not just for when you are single.
Right.
It's so important when you are in a relationship.
I do that now.
Yes.
I do that often.
Julia Cameron speaks about taking yourself on a solo date, what she calls the artist date, to get creative.
Beautiful.
You have to. And you have to. And also, the reason why there's a lot of shame and judgment attached to it is because as women, we're always having to play a role. And when you're on that solo date, there's no roles.
Wow.
The cameras are off, you're not on stage, it's just you. And sometimes your thoughts get very loud and you become hyper aware of your existence. So you'd rather play whatever role you need to play before you need to face who you are.
Wow.
So that's something that I find a lot of clients are dealing with, because the first time I ever did it, I was hyper aware of who I was. Like, is this how you are?
Really?
Like, is this what you like? Like, I was like, wow, is this my taste?
Wow.
Yes, but like I started falling in love with myself, but it's not always a situation where you're falling in love with yourself. It sometimes becomes too much, and it's like, I'd rather go play the wife role, the mother role, and have the distractions, because this is too much. Because now I start thinking about, who I was. A lot of women say they've lost themselves. But you can always just date yourself in your relationship, in your marriage. And it also cultivates femininity. That's what keeps you beautiful. That's what keeps you soft.
love that.
Because when I'm always playing
you soft.
Yes, it keeps you so soft, because when you're always playing a role, I'm always doing something, which means I cannot receive the way I need to in my relationship. So that's you just letting your guard down.
Chelsea, can you often tell when a woman is in a good feminine space and within that feminine energy, and when she isn't?
Yes.
Okay.
What are the signs?
Yeah.
I can
What are the
definitely
signs? what do you think I'm in a good space, honey?
You definitely are. No, you definitely are, Leanne. You really are.
Good.
But the first thing that shows me if a woman is in her feminine energy is her relationship with other women. And it's the thing about both of you that stands out for me. The way you engage and the way you really interact with other women and create space for other women, that's the biggest sign of femininity. But also, if I just meet a woman without other women around, it's the defensiveness. That's a very big thing. That tells me that this is a woman, in her life, she does not feel safe. She feels
she's in her masculine.
Exactly. She feels the need to protect or do what she needs to do to survive. She wants to control the narrative and the outcome of every single thing.
Wow.
I can always pick up on it within the first 5 minutes of a session. And then I tell the client, listen here, we can wrap this up right.
Yeah.
Okay? It's either you're going to...
Chelsea's that coach.
Yeah.
I'm that coach, okay? I'm not here to wait for
Beat
you
around
to
the
breathe.
bush, yes,
No.
yes,
We,
yes.
we can wrap this up very quickly
Right.
if you're not in your receptive mode.
Right.
Because I need you to receive so that we can unlock. So you can definitely tell with the way she interacts with other women, the way she, it's not always pretty dresses and things like that. But the way she handles situations, the way she receives certain things, and you can pick up on it in the workplace, women in certain roles. And it's not because she wants to be masculine. She was forced to be. She's doing what she needs to do to survive. And when those women unlock that, oh my goodness, she's the softest little candy floss.
Right.
I love that. As soft as can. I'm going to be as soft as candy
Yes.
floss. Chelsea, you spoke a lot about just how we can form the healthy attachments. What about the fact, you're in a relationship? Let's talk about that. And you have this awakening and you understand actually. Because, when you awaken, certain relationships also come to an end. They can be friendships because you realize that actually it wasn't healthy for me. If I'm doing the work and my partner isn't, what's happening? Or what's bound to happen?
You know what's bound to happen, Kim.
I do know, and I don't want to say
She
it
just
out
wants
loud.
you to say it out loud.
yes,
You have to say it out loud.
The
Yeah.
relationship comes to an end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that is what happens when you take yourself to the next level and the people in your life don't.
Yeah.
And when those connections end, allow for that to happen too. It's not a very nice thing. And, when you have unhealed parts of you, you're going to want to bring everyone along with you.
Sure.
Yes. And you forget that it's not my job to control that.
Yeah.
I need to allow them to be where they're at. I always say you meet people at a level at which they've met themselves. I cannot take you further than that.
Wow.
So
Yes.
good. Yeah.
And you cannot be responsible.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if within my growth I inspire growth, that's great because that's still a level that you're at within your personal development. But I cannot force you. And if that's where you want to stay, if you're not interested in going further, if I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting, again, I love being feminine and soft. Don't burden me. I don't like troubles and stress. I want to love and be loved. But if this is a lot of work for me, I'm going to have to move on to a space that is better for me.
Okay, Chelsea, as we wrap up, we've spoken a lot about being in relationship and existing relationships. I am single, I'm on my own, or perhaps I've met a new friend, potential friend. How do I go about establishing a healthy relationship?
So the first thing, Kim, is you work on your relationship with self. Most important, that is something I've been emphasizing throughout, that you continue to date yourself, that you pour into yourself, that you have your own life and your own hobbies. Please, so important, having a life of your own. And
that's beautiful.
I don't have this thinking of relationships of 50-50. I see it as 100-100. And sometimes the person can be a bit more or a bit less, but I'm still whatever my capacity is. And that is something I want people to keep in mind as they are moving forward or getting into relationships and dating, is that they understand that I need to be a full person at all times, not just to get into a relationship, because people drop the ball when they are now in it. So as you do the transition, as you're getting to know someone, definitely. Also, don't compromise on your standards. Whatever your standards are, you keep them. Whatever your values are, you keep them. Don't drop them, because you know what works for you and you know what your worth is and you know what love looks like for you. And you can't have scarcity mindset. So as you are going into the dating game or even a relationship, don't have scarcity mindset. Be aware of your attachment style. Do research, see what works for you. See a coach, see a therapist. Have someone you can offload onto so that you are not forming trauma bonds with the people that you're making connections with. And most importantly, Kim, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Dating is beautiful. I love it.
Right.
So please enjoy it.
Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Don't think you need to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
Don't think, oh, I need to be a fairy and I need to smile all the time. You don't need to be any of that. You just need to enjoy it, and you give love, you pour love, but you know that you are always showing up at your full capacity, whatever that looks like. And you meet people at the level at which they've met themselves.
Love that.
I love that. You meet people at the level at which
They have
met themselves.
Yes.
And I think that also speaks to, it's not going to be easy to say to somebody, because you know who you are and you know what you want because you've been dating yourself.
Yes.
You know what you're looking for. It's going to be easy to say, actually, this is not working for me, or yes, this is.
Yes.
You know. Thank you
love
so
that.
much, Chelsea.
Thank you so much for having me.
We can keep talking.
We love having you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Losing track of time.